The next summer, we turned 13. Him first, and then me. Our bodies began to stretch, pulling at our joints till they were aching and weak. In Peleus' shining bronze mirror, I almost did not recognize myself. Lanky and gaunt, stalk legs and sharpening chin. Achilles was taller still, seeming to tower above me. Eventually we would be of a height, but he came to his maturity sooner, with a startling speed, primed perhaps by the divinity in his blood. The boys, too, were growing older. Regularly now we heard moans behind closed doors, saw shadows returning to their beds before dawn. In our countries, a man often took a wife before his beard was fully fledged. How much earlier, then, did he take a serving girl? It was expected. Very few men came to their marriage beds without having done so. It would have been easy, infinitely easy, for Achilles or me to have bedded one of these girls ourselves. At 13, we were almost too late to do so, especially him, since princes were known for their appetites. Instead, we watched in silence as foster boys pulled girls onto their laps, or Peleus summoned the prettiest to his room after dinner. Once, I even heard the king offer her to his son.
Achilles, you might want to look for that lighthouse girl from the kitchen. She's been haunting doorways for you, I hear.
Perhaps, Father. I'm tired tonight.
I'm sure she could wake you up.
When we got back to our room, we washed our faces in silence. But there was an ache in me. Like a rotten tooth, I could not let it be. That girl. Did you like her?
Why, you?
No, that's not what I mean. What I mean to say is that
I'm sick of talking about her.
Good night. At night, in bed, images come. They begin as dreams, trailing caresses in my sleep from which I start, trembling. I lie awake and still they come. The flicker of firelight on the neck, the curve of the hip bone drawing downwards, hands, smooth and strong, reaching to touch me. I know those hands, but even here, behind the darkness of my eyelids, I cannot name the thing I hope for. During the days, I grow restless and fidgety, but all my pacing, singing, running does not keep them at bay. They come and will not be stopped. It is summer, one of the first fine days. We are on the beach after lunch, our backs to a sloping piece of driftwood. The sun is high, and the air warm around us. Beside me, Achilles shifts, and his foot falls open against mine. It is cool, and chafed pink from the sand, soft from a winter indoors. He hums something, a piece of a song he had played earlier. I turn to look at him. His face is smooth, without the blotches and spots that have begun to afflict the older boys. His features are drawn with a firm hand, nothing awry or sloppy, nothing too large, all precise, cut with the sharpest of knives. And yet the effect itself is not sharp. He turns and finds me looking at him.
What?
Nothing. I can smell them. The oils that he uses on his feet, pomegranate and sandalwood, the salt of clean sweat, the hyacinth we had walked through, their scent crushed against our ankles. Beneath it all is his own smell, the one I go to sleep with, the one I wake up to. I cannot describe it. It is sweet, but not just. It is strong, but not too strong, something like almond, but that still is not right. Sometimes after we've wrestled, my own skin smells like it. He puts a hand down to lean against. The muscles in his arms curve softly, appearing and disappearing as he moves. His eyes are deep green on mine. My pulse jumps. For no reason I can name, he has looked at me 1,000 times, but there is something different in this gaze, an intensity I do not know. My mouth is dry and I can hear the sound of my throat as I swallow. He is watching me. It seems that he is waiting. I shift. An infinitesimal movement towards him. It is like the leap from a waterfall. I do not know until then what I am going to do. I lean forward, and our lips land clumsily on each other. They are like the fat bodies of bees, soft and round and giddy with pollen. I can taste his mouth, hot and sweet with honey from dessert. My stomach trembles, and a warm drop of pleasure spreads beneath my skin. More. The strength of my desire, the speed with which it flowers, shocks me. I flinch and startle back at him. I have a moment, only a moment, to see his face framed in the afternoon light, his lips slightly parted, still half forming a kiss. His eyes are wide with surprise. I am horrified. What have I done? But I do not have time to apologize. He stands and steps backwards. His face is closed over, impenetrable and distant, freezing the explanations in my mouth. He turns and races, the fastest boy in the world, out the beach and away. My side is cold with his absence. My skin feels tight, and my face, I know, is red and raw as a burn. Dear gods, let him not hate me. I should have known better than to call upon the gods. When I turned the corner onto the garden path, she was there, sharp and knife bright.
The blue dress clung to her skin as it damp. Her dark eyes held mine, and her fingers, chill and unearthly pale, reached for me. My feet knocked against each other as she lifted me from the earth. I have seen the sound of waves breaking on stone. I could not speak. She held me by the throat. He is leaving. Her eyes were black now, dark as sea-wet rocks and as jagged. I should have sent him long ago. Do not try to follow. I could not breathe now, but I did not struggle. That much at least I knew. She seemed to pause, and I thought she might speak again. She did not. Only opened her hand and released me boneless to the ground. Mother's wishes in our countries, they were not worth much, but she was a goddess, first and always. When I returned to the room, it was already dark. I found Achilles sitting on his bed, staring at his feet, his head lifted, almost hopefully, as I came to the doorway. I did not speak. His mother's black eyes still burned in front of me, and the sight of his heels flashing up the beach. Forgive me, it was a mistake. This is what I might have dared to say then if it had not been for her. I came into the room and sat on my own bed. He shifted, his eyes flicking to mine. He did not resemble her the way that children normally look like a parent, a tilt of a chin, the shape of an eye. It was something in his movements, in his luminous skin, son of a goddess. What had I thought would happen? Even from where I sat, I could smell the sea on him.
Supposed to leave tomorrow.
Oh,
I'm going to be taught by Chiron. He taught Heracles and Perseus.
Not yet, he had said to me, but his mother had chosen differently. The next morning at dawn, he rose and dressed. I was awake. I had not slept. I watched him through the fringes of my eyelids, feigning sleep. From time to time, he glanced at me. Dim half-light, his skin glowed gray and smooth as marble. He slung his bag over his shoulder and paused the last time at the door. I remember him there, outlined in the stone frame, his hair falling loose, still untidy from sleep. I closed my eyes, and a moment passed. When I opened them again, I was alone.
my breakfast. Everyone knew he was gone. I walked to the olive grove, earth dry beneath my feet. I could smell the sea. It was everywhere, in my hair, in my clothes, in the sticky damp of my skin. Even here in the grove, the unwholesome, salty decay still found me. I must get away from this smell. I walked to the palace road, which twisted northwards towards Mount Otris and then beyond to Mount Helium. I could leave. The thought was sudden, arresting. I had come to the road, meaning only to escape the sea, but the path lay before me, and the mountains, and Achilles. I had nothing that belonged to me. I do not need to pack, even. Only my mother's lyre stayed me. I hesitated a moment, thinking I might try to go back to take it with me, but it was already midday. I had only the afternoon to travel before they would discover my absence. So I glanced back to the palace and saw no one. The guards were elsewhere. Now. It must be now. I ran. Away from the palace, down the path towards the woods, feet stinging as they slapped the heat-baked ground. As I ran, I promised myself that if I ever saw him again, I would keep my thoughts behind my eyes. I had learned now what it would cost me if I did not. The ache in my legs, the kniving heaves of my chest felt clean and good. I ran. After an hour or two, I could go no farther. I bent over in pain. The bright afternoon sun wavering to black, the rush of blood deafening in my ears. The path was heavily wooded now, and Achilles' palace was a long way behind me. And I began to walk. Hours passed. My muscles grew wobbling and weak, my feet jumbled together. Suddenly I understood that I would not reach Pelion by nightfall. I would not catch up to Achilles. I was sure of that now. He had left the road and his horse long ago and was now moving up the slopes on foot. There was an ache in my stomach, like hunger or despair. And then there was something else. The barest sound, just at the limit of hearing, but I caught it in my skin even in the heat when cold. I knew that sound. It was the sound of stealth, of a man attempting silence. It had been just the smallest misstep, the giving way of a single leaf, but it had been enough. My fingers pinched themselves white as I tried to still all breath, all movement, to give nothing away.
There was a movement from the woods at my side, and I jerked my head towards it. Too late. Someone struck me from behind, throwing me forwards. I closed my eyes and waited for a night. There was nothing. Nothing but the silence and the knee that pinned my back. A moment passed, and it came to me that the knee was not so very heavy and was placed so that its presence did not hurt.
Patroclus.
Patroclus. I did not move. The knee lifted, and hands reached out to turn me gently over. Achilles was looking down at me.
I had hoped you would come.
My stomach rolled, awash with nerves and relief at once. I drank him in, the bright hair, the soft curve of his lips upwards. My joy was so sharp I did not dare to breathe. I do not know what I might have said then. I'm sorry, perhaps, or perhaps something more. I opened my mouth.
Is the boy hurt?
A deep voice spoke from behind us both. Achilles' head turned. From where I was beneath him, I could see only the legs of the man's horse, Chestnut, fetlocks dulled with dust.
I'm assuming, Achilles Pelides, that this is why you have not yet joined me on the mountain?
My mind groped towards understanding. Achilles had not gone to Chiron. He had waited here, for me.
Greetings, Master Chiron, and my apologies. Yes, it is why I'm late.
I see.
I wished that Achilles would get up. I felt foolish here on the ground beneath him. And I was also afraid. The man's voice showed no anger, but it showed no kindness either. It was clear and grave and dispassionate.
Stand up.
Slowly, Achilles rose. I would have screamed then if my throat had not closed over with fear. Instead, I made a noise like a half-strangled yelp and scrambled backwards. The horse's muscular legs ended in flesh, the equally muscular torso of a man. I stared at that impossible suture of horse and human, where smooth skin became gleaming brown coat. Beside me, Achilles bowed his head.
Master Centaur, I apologize for the delay. I had to wait for my companion. I've long wished to be your student.
You do not need to kneel to me, Pelides, although I appreciate the courtesy. And who is the companion who has kept us both waiting?
This is Patroclus. My lord.
I am not a lord, Patroclus Menoetiades. I am a centaur and a teacher of men. My name is Chiron. You are overtired, I think. You need water, food, both. It is a long way to my home on Pelion, too long for you to walk. So, we must make other arrangements. You will ride on my back. I do not usually offer such things on first acquaintance. But other arrangements must be made. You haven't taught to ride, I suppose? That is unfortunate. Forget what you have learned. I do not like to be squeezed by legs or tugged at. The one in front will hold on to my waist. The one in back will hold on to him. If you think you are going to fall, speak up.
How should I?
I will kneel. Take my arm for balance.
Achilles did, swinging his arm over and settling himself. It was my turn. At least I would not be in front, so close to that place where his skin gave way to chestnut coat. Chiron offered me his arm, and I took it. It was muscled and large, thickly covered with black hair that was nothing like the color of his horse hat. I seated myself, my legs stretched across that wide back, almost to discomfort.
I will stand now.
The motion was smooth, but still I grabbed for Achilles. Chiron was half as high again as a normal horse, and my feet dangled so far above the ground, it made me dizzy. Achilles' hand rested loosely on Chiron's trunk.
You will fall if you hold so lightly.
My fingers grew damp from sweat from touching Achilles' chest. I dared not relax them even for a moment. The centaur's gait was less symmetrical than a horse's, and the ground was uneven. I slipped alarmingly upon the slick horsehair. There was no path I could see, but we were rising swiftly upwards through the trees, carried along by Chiron's sure, unslowing steps. I winced every time the jumps caused my heels to kick into the centaur's sides. As we went, Chiron pointed things out to us in that same steady voice.
There is Mount Othrys. The cypress trees are thicker here on the north side. You can see. That stream feeds the Apidanus River, which flows to the Thea's lands.
Achilles twisted back to look at me, grinning. We climbed higher still, and the centaur swished his great black tail, swatting flies for all of us.
Chiron stopped suddenly, and I jumped into Achilles' back. We were in a small break in the woods. A grove of sorts, half encircled by a rocky outcrop. We were not quite at the peak, but we were close, and the sky was blue and glowing above us.
We are here.
But to call it that is to demean it, for it was not made of dark stone, but pale rose quartz.
Come.
We followed him through the entrance, high enough so that he did not need to stoop. We blinked, it was shadowy inside, though lighter than it should have been because of the crystal walls. At one end was a small spring that seemed to drain away inside the rock. On the walls hung things I did not recognize, strange bronze implements. Above us on the cave ceiling, lines and specks of dye shaped the constellations and the movements of the heavens. On carved shelves were dozens of small ceramic jars covered with slanted markings. Instruments hung in one corner, lyres and flutes, and next to them tools and cooking pots. There was a single human-sized bed, thick and padded with animal skins, made up for Achilles. I did not see where the centaur slept. Perhaps he did not.
Sit. Now.
It was pleasantly cool inside. perfect after the sun, and I sank gratefully into one of the cushions Chiron indicated. He went to the spring and filled cups which he brought to us. The water was sweet and fresh. I drank as Chiron stood over me.
You will be sore and tired tomorrow, but it will be better if you eat.
He ladled out stew, thick with chunks of vegetables and meat from a pot, simmering over a small fire at the back of the cave. There were fruits too, round red berries that he kept in a small hollowed outcropping of rock. I ate quickly, surprised at how hungry I was. My eyes kept returning to Achilles, and I tingled with the giddy buoyancy of relief. I had escaped. With my new boldness, I pointed to some of the bronze tools on the walls. What are those?
They are for healing. They are for surgery.
Surgery? It was not the word I knew.
Healing. I forget the barbarities of the Low Countries. Sometimes a limb must go. Those are for cutting. Those are for suturing. Often by removing some, we may save the rest. Do you wish to learn medicine?
Why, I don't know anything about it.
You answer a different question than the one I asked.
I am sorry, Master Chiron. I did not want to anger him. He will send me back.
There is no need to be sorry. Simply answer.
Yes, I would like to learn. It does seem useful, does it not?
It is very useful. And you, Pelides? Do you also think medicine is useful?
Of course. Please, Master Chiron, do not call me Pelides. Here I'm just Achilles.
Very well. Do you see anything you wish to know of?
Those.
Achilles was pointing to the musical instruments, the lyres and flutes and the seven-string guitar.
Do you play?
I do.
So do I. I've heard you taught Heracles and Perseus. Thick-fingered though they were. Is it true?
It is.
I felt a momentary unreality. He knew Heracles and Perseus, had known them as children.
Will you teach me how to play?
That is why you have been sent here, so that I may teach you what I know.
In the late afternoon light, Chiron guided us through the ridges near the cave. He showed us where the mountain lions had their dens, where the river was slow and sun warm for us to swim. He stopped occasionally to point out the trails of hare, and corn, grapes, and deer. He told us we would hunt for them in days to come and learn to track. We listened, questioning him eagerly. At Peleus' palace there had been only the dour lyre master for a teacher, or Peleus himself, half drowsing as he spoke. We knew nothing of forestry or the other skills Chiron had spoken of. My mind went back to the implements on the cave's wall, the herbs and tools of healing. Surgery was the word he had used.
It was almost full dark when we reached the cave again. Chiron gave us easy tasks, gathering wood and kindling a fire in the clearing at the cave's mouth. After it caught, we lingered by the flames, grateful for their steady warmth and the cooling air. Our bodies were pleasantly tired, heavy from our exertions, and our legs and feet tangled comfortably as we sat. We talked about where we'd go tomorrow, but lazily, our words fat and slow with contentment. Dinner was more stew and a thin type of bread that Chiron cooked on bronze sheets over the fire. For dessert, berries with mountain-gathered honey. As the fire dwindled, my eyes closed and half dreaming. I was warm, and the ground beneath me was soft with moss and fallen leaves. I could not believe that only this morning I had woken in Peleus' palace. This small clearing, the gleaming white walls of the cave within, were more vivid than the pale white palace had ever been. Chiron's voice, when it came, startled me.
I will tell you that your mother has sent a message, Achilles.
Oh. What did she say?
She said that should the exiled son of Menoetius follow you, I was to bar him from your presence.
Did she say why?
She did not. I assume you knew of her feelings on the matter? I do not like to be deceived.
Well, I'm sorry. It is not Achilles' fault. I came on my own. He did not know that I would. He did not think that... I hoped you would not notice.
That was foolish of you.
Chiron!
As it happens, the message came this morning before either of you arrived. So, despite your foolishness, I was not deceived.
You knew? So you've made up your mind. You've chosen to disregard her message.
She is a goddess, Achilles, and your mother besides. Do you think so little of her wishes?
I honor her, Chiron, but she's wrong in this.
And why is she wrong, Pelides?
She feels that he is just a mortal and not a fit companion.
Do you think he is?
Yes.
I see. And you, Patroclus, you are worthy?
I do not know if I am worthy, but I wish to stay. Please.
When I brought the two of you here, I had not decided yet what I would do. Thetis sees many faults, some that are and some that are not. She is also young and has the prejudices of her kind. I am older and can read a man more clearly. I have no objections to Patroclus as your companion. She will not be pleased. But I have weathered the anger of gods before, and now it is late and time for you to sleep.
Thank you, Master Chiron.
I will leave, if there will be trouble.
Do not let what you have gained this day be so easily lost. Good night.
Good night. The next morning, I woke to the soft sounds of Chiron getting breakfast ready. I had slept well and deeply. I watched Achilles for a moment, his rosy cheeks and steady breath. Something tugged at me, just beneath my skin, but then Chiron lifted a hand in greeting, and I lifted one shyly in return, and it was forgotten. That day, after we ate, we joined Chiron for his chores. It was easy, pleasurable work, collecting berries, catching fish for dinner, setting quail snares. The beginning of our studies, if it is possible to call them that, for Chiron liked to teach not in set lessons, but in opportunities. When the goats that wandered the ridges took ill, we learned how to mix purgatives for their bad stomachs. When I fell down a ravine and fractured my arm, we learned how to set splints. On a hunting trip, he taught us how to move silently and how to read the scuffles of tracks. And when we had found the animal, the best way to aim a bow or sling so that death was quick.
Every night and every morning, we helped with meals, churning the thick goat's milk for yogurt and cheese, gutting fish. It was work we had never been allowed to do before as princes, and we fell upon it eagerly. Following Chiron's instructions, we watched in amazement as butter formed before our eyes, at the way pheasant eggs sizzled and solidified in fire-warmed rocks. After a month, over breakfast, Chiron asked us what else we wished to learn.
Those.
I pointed to the instruments on the wall. For surgery, he had said. He took them down for us one by one.
Careful. The blade is very sharp. It is for when there is rot in the flesh that must be cut. Press the skin around the wound, and you will hear a crackle.
Then he had us trace the bones in our own bodies, running a hand over the ridging vertebrae of each other's backs. He pointed with his fingers, teaching the place beneath the skin where the organs lodge.
A wound in any of these will eventually be fatal, but death is quickest here.
His finger tapped the slight concavity of Achilles' temple. A chill went through me to see it touch, that place where Achilles' life was so slenderly protected. I was glad when we spoke of other things. At night, we lay on the soft grass in front of the cave, and Chiron showed us the constellations, telling their stories. Later, Achilles would play the lyre as Chiron and I listened. My mother's lyre. He had brought it with him.
I wish I had known. I almost did not come because I did not want to leave it.
Now I know how to make you follow me everywhere.
The sun sank below Pelian's ridges, and we were happy.
Time passed quickly on Mount Pelion, days slipping by in Italy. The mountain air was cold now in the mornings when we woke, and Chiron gave us furs to wear, hung animal skins from the cave's entrance to keep the warmth in. In the mornings we marveled at the frost-etched leaves. We knew of snow from bards and stories. We had never seen it. One morning, I woke to find Chiron gone. This was not unusual. He often rose before we did, to milk the goats or pick fruits for breakfast. I left the cave so that Achilles might sleep, and I sat to wait for Chiron in the clearing. The strangeness began as a prickling of my skin. The leaves stilled, and the breeze died, and no animals moved in the brush. There was a quality to the silence like a held breath, like the rabbit beneath the hawk's shadow. I could feel my pulse striking my skin. Sometimes I reminded myself Chiron did small magics, tricks of divinity, like warming water or calming animals. Chiron! Chiron!
It is not Chiron.
I turned. Theta stood at the edge of the clearing, her bone white skin and black hair bright as flashes of lightning. The dress she wore clung close to her body and shimmered like fish scale. My breath died in my throat.
You were not to be here.
The scrape of jagged rocks against a ship's hull. She stepped forward, and the grass seemed to wilt beneath her feet. She was a sea nymph, and the things of earth did not love her.
I'm sorry.
I warned you.
The black of her eyes seemed to seep into me, fill my throat to choking. I could not have cried out if I dared to.
Greetings, Thetis. You are frightening the boy.
He does not belong here.
Her lips were red as newly spilled blood.
Patroclus, you will return to the cave now. I will speak with you later.
You have lived too long with mortal centaur.
I heard her say before the animal skins closed behind me. I sagged against the cave's wall. My throat tasted brackish and raw.
Achilles. Are you all right? Your mother is here. She did not hurt you?
It did not add that I thought she wanted to, that she might have if Chiron had not come.
I must go.
The skins whispered against each other as they parted for him, then slipped shut again. I could not hear what was said in the clearing. Their voices were low, or perhaps they had gone to speak elsewhere. I waited, tracing spirals in the packed earth floor. Did not worry any longer for myself. Chiron meant to keep me, and he was older than she was, full grown when the gods still rocked in their cradles, when she had only been an egg in the womb of the sea. But there was something else, less easy to name, a loss or a lessening that I feared her presence might bring. It was almost midday when they returned. My gaze went to Achilles' face first, searching his eyes, the set of his mouth. I saw nothing, but perhaps a touch of tiredness. He threw himself onto the pallet beside me.
I'm hungry.
As well you should be. It is much past lunch.
That's right. She just wanted to speak to me, to see me.
She will come to speak with him again, as is proper. She is his mother.
She is a goddess first, I thought. Yet as we ate, my fears eased. I had half worried she might have told Chiron of the day by the beach, but he was no different towards either of us, and Achilles was the same as he always was. I went to bed, not at peace, at least reassured. She came more often after that day, as Chiron had said she would. I learned to listen for it, a silence that dropped like a curtain, and knew to stay close to Chiron then and the cave. The intrusion was not much, and I told myself I did not begrudge her, but I was always glad when she was gone again.
One morning, Achilles asked Chiron if he would teach us to fight. I do not know what made him think of this then. A winter indoors with not enough exercise, perhaps, or the visit from his mother the week before. Perhaps neither. Would you teach us to fight? There was a pause so brief I almost might have imagined it before Chiron answered.
If you wish it, I will teach you.
Later that day, he took us to a clearing high on a ridge. He had 2 practice swords for us, taken from the storage in some corner of the cave. He asked us each to perform the drills that we knew. I did slowly the blocks and strikes and footwork I'd learned in Thea. To my side, just in the corner of my vision, Achilles' limbs blurred and struck. Chiron had a bronze-bended staff that he interposed occasionally into our passes, probing with it, testing our reactions. At last, Chiron called a halt. He drank deep from water skins and lay back on the grass. My chest was heaving. Achilles was steady. Chiron was silent, standing in front of us.
Well, what do you think?
Achilles was eager, and I remembered that Chiron was only the fourth person to have ever seen him fight. I did not know what I expected him to say, but it was not what followed.
There is nothing I can teach you. You know all that Heracles knew and more. You are the greatest warrior of your generation and all the generations before. Men will hear of your skills, and they will wish for you to fight their wars. What will you answer?
I don't know.
That is an answer for now. It will not be good enough later.
What about me?
You will never gain fame from your fighting. Is that surprising to you?
No.
Yet it is not beyond you to learn to be a competent soldier. Do you wish to learn this?
I thought of the boy's dulled eyes, how quickly his blood had soaked the ground. I thought of Achilles, the greatest warrior of his generation. I thought of Thetis, who would take him from me if she could.
No.
And that was the end of our lessons in soldiery.
Spring passed into summer, and the woods grew warm and abundant, lush with game and fruit. Achilles turned 14, and messengers brought gifts for him from Peleus. The gifts were welcome, new lyre strings and fresh tunics spun from the finest wool. Some things were less useful. There was a horse coat, thickly embroidered, meant to adorn the mount of a prince.
I hope this is not for me.
We tore it up for compresses and bandages and scrub cloths. That afternoon, we lay out on the grass.
It's been almost a year since we left the palace.
It doesn't feel so long.
Do you miss it?
I thought of his father's gifts, the servants and their gazes, the whispering gossip they would bring back to the palace.
No. I don't either. I thought I would, but I don't.
The days turned, and the months, and 2 years passed. It was spring, and we were 15. The winter ice had lasted longer than usual, and we were glad to be outside once more beneath the sun. Achilles was stretching, rolling limbs that were stiff from too long indoors. We had spent the morning swimming and chasing game through the forest. My muscles felt wearily content, glad to be used again. I watched him. Other than the unsteady surface of the river, there were no mirrors on Mount Pelion, so I could only measure myself by the changes in Achilles. His limbs were still slender, but I could see the muscles in them now, rising and falling beneath his skin as he moved. His face, too, was firmer, and his shoulders broader than they had been. You look older.
I do?
Yeah. Do I?
Come here. You do.
Huh. A lot?
Your face is different.
Where?
Your jaw is wider here. And this also.
What else?
And this. And all this.
That's enough. Sat again on the grass as he resumed his stretches. I watched the breeze stir his hair. I watched the sun fall on his golden skin. I leaned back and let some fall on me as well. After some time, he stopped and came to sit beside me. We watched the grass and the trees and the nubs of new buds just growing.
You would not be displeased, I think, with the way you look now.
My face grew warm again, but we spoke no more of it. We were almost 16. Soon, Peleus' messengers would come with gifts. Soon, the berries would ripen, the fruits would blush and fall into our hands. 16 was the last year of childhood, the year before our fathers named us men. A marriage would be arranged for Achilles, and I might take a wife if I wished to. I remembered the snatches of conversation I had overheard from the boys, the talk of breasts and hips and coupling. But when I tried to imagine what they spoke of, my mind slid away like a fish that could not be caught. Other images came in their stead. The curve of a neck bent over a lyre, hair gleaming in firelight, hands with their flickering tendons. We were together all day, and I could not escape. The smell of his oils he used on his feet, the glimpses of skin as he dressed. I would wrench my gaze from him and remember the day on the beach, the coldness in his eyes and how he ran away from me. And always I would remember his mother. One evening, after Achilles' 16th birthday, we stayed late beside the fire's embers. Achilles had been gone for much of the afternoon. Thetis had come and kept him longer even than usual. Now he was playing my mother's lyre. The music was quiet and bright as the stars over our heads. Next to me I heard Chiron yawn, settle more deeply onto his folded legs. A moment later the lyre ceased and Achilles' voice came loud in the darkness.
Are you weary, Master Chiron?
I am.
Then we will leave you to your rest.
He was not usually so quick to go, nor to speak for me, but I was tired myself and did not object. I stretched, soaked up a few more minutes of firelight, and then I followed. Inside the cave, Achilles was already in bed, his face damp from a wash in the spring. I washed too, the water cool across my forehead.
You have not yet asked me about my visit with my mother.
How is she?
She's well.
This was the answer he always gave, why sometimes I did not ask him. Good.
She says she cannot see us here. She cannot see us here on Pelion.
What do you mean?
I asked her if she watches us, and she said she doesn't. She was not pleased that I had asked her.
She was not pleased. My mind started turning and turning through the words. She cannot see us. Are you pleased with her answer?
Yes.
We lay there a moment, in that strained and living silence. Usually at night we would tell each other jokes or stories. The ceiling above us was painted with the stars, and if we grew tired of talking, we would point to them. But tonight there was nothing. I closed my eyes and waited long minutes until I guessed he was asleep. And I turned to look at him. He was on his side, watching me. I had not heard him turn. I never hear him. He was utterly motionless, that stillness that was his alone. I breathed and was aware of the bare stretch of dark pillar between us. He leaned forward. Our mouths opened under each other, and the warmth of his sweetened throat poured into mine. I could not think, could not do anything but drink him in. Each breath as it came, the soft movement of his lips, it was a miracle. I was trembling, afraid to put him to flight. I did not know what to do, what he would like. I kissed his neck, the span of his chest, and tasted the salt. He smelled like almonds and the earth. He pressed against me, crushing my lips to wine. I knew Achilles' golden skin, and the curve of his neck, the crooks of his elbows. He was outlined now against the stars. Polaris sat on his shoulder. I said his name, I think. It blew through me. I was hollow as a reed hung up for the wind to sound. There was no time that passed but our breaths. His face was pressed against me. But I tried to clutch him closer still. Do not stop, I said. He did not stop. The feeling gathered and gathered till a hoarse cry leapt from my throat and the sharp flowering drove me arching against him. It was not enough. My hand reached for him. His eyes closed and his eyelids were color of the dawn sky. He smelled like earth after rain. His mouth opened in an inarticulate cry, and we were pressed so close that I felt his warmth against me. He shuddered, and we lay still. Slowly, like dusk falling, I became aware of my sweat, dampness of the covers. We separated, peeling away from each other, our faces puffy and half bruised from kisses. The cave smelled hot and sweet, like fruit beneath the sun. Our eyes met, and we did not speak. Fear rose in me, sudden and sharp. This was the moment of truest peril, and I tensed, fearing his regret.
I did not think that...
What?
I did not think that we...
I did not think so either.
I'm sorry.
I'm not.
Me either.
There was a silence then. And I did not care about the damp palate or how sweaty I was. His eyes were unwavering, green, flecked with gold. A surety rose in me, lodged in my throat. I will never leave him. It will be this, always, for as long as he will have me. If I had words to speak such a thing, I would have. But there were none that seemed big enough for it to hold that swelling truth. As if he had heard me, he reached for my hand. I did not need to look. His fingers were etched into my memory, slender and petal veined, strong and quick and never wrong.
Choked.
It was always better with words than that. The next morning, I awoke light-headed, my body woozy with warmth and ease. After the tenderness had come more passion, but we had been slower then and lingering, a dreamy night that stretched on and on. We stayed in bed until the cave was bright with morning and Chiron called. We ate and ran to the river to watch. I savoured the miracle of being able to watch him openly, to enjoy the play of dappled light on his limbs, the curving of his back as he dove beneath the water. Later we lay on the riverbank, learning the lines of each other's bodies anew, this and this and this. We were like gods at the dawning of the world, and our joy was so bright we could see nothing else but each other. If Chiron noticed the change, he did not speak of it. But I could not help worrying. Do you think you'll be angry?
I do not think so.
But, well, he might. Surely he must know by now. Should we say something? It was not the first time I had wondered this. We had discussed it often, ego with conspiracy.
If you like.
That is what he had said before. You don't think you will be angry?
No, I don't think so.
But he could tell your father. He might be angry.
So what if he is?
Well, what about your mother? This was the trinity of my fears. Chiron, Achilles, and Thetis.
What could she do, kidnap me?
She could kill me, I thought. But I did not say this. The breeze was too sweet, and the sun too warm for a thought like that to be spoken.
Are you worried that they're going to be angry?
Yes. I would be horrified to find that Chiron upset with me. Disapproval had always burrowed deep within me. I could not shake it off as easily as Achilles did, but I would not let it separate us if it came to that. No.
Good. Name one hero who was happy. You can't.
I can't.
That's because they never let you be famous and happy. But I'm going to be different. You're the reason. Swear it.
I swear it.
Swear it?
I swear it.
I feel like I could eat the whole world raw.
The trumpet blew, somewhere on the slopes beneath us.
It was abrupt and ragged as it sounded a warning. Before I could speak or move, he was on his feet, his dagger out, slapped up from the sheath on his thigh. It was only a hunting knife, but in his hands it would be enough. He stood poised, utterly still, listening with all of his half-god senses. I had a knife too. Quickly, I reached for it and stood. He had placed himself between me and the sound. Did not know if I should go to him, stand beside him with my own weapon lifted. In the end, I did not. It had been a soldier's trumpet in battle, as Chiron had so bluntly said, was his gift, not mine. The trumpet sounded again. We heard the swish of underbrush tangled by a pair of feet. One man. Perhaps he was lost, perhaps in danger. Achilles took a step forward towards the sound. As if in answer, the trumpet came again. Then a voice bawled up the mountain.
Prince Achilles! Achilles, I'm here for Prince Achilles!
It's from your father. Only a royal herald will know medical for us. We are here!
Where?
Can you follow my voice?
He could, though poorly. It was some time before he stepped forward into the clearing. His face was scratched and he had sweated through his pal's tunic. He knelt with ill grace. Achilles had lowered the knife, though I saw how tightly he still held it.
Yes?
We have urgent business at home. Your father calls with me.
What sort of business?
My lord, your pardon, I do not know all of it. Messengers came from Achilles to talk with Achilles. He wishes to speak to the people and wants you there. We have horses for you below.
Patroclus and I will need time to pack our things.
On the way back to the cave in Chiron, Achilles and I speculated about the news. Mycenae was far to our south, and its king was Agamemnon, who liked to call himself a lord of men. He was said to have the greatest army of all our kingdoms.
It'll only be for a few days.
I was grateful to hear him say it, just a few days.
I heard the shouts.
My father has called us home, just for a few nights, for an urgent business.
I see.
He seemed larger than usual, standing there, hooves dull against the bright grass, his chestnut-colored flanks lit by the sun. I wondered if he'd be lonely without us. I had never seen him with another centaur. We asked him about them once, and his face had gone stiff. Barbarians, he'd said. We gathered our things and went to say our farewells to Chiron. Achilles, always bolder, embraced the centaur, his arms encircling the place where the horse flank gave way to flesh. The messenger, waiting behind me, shifted.
Achilles, do you remember when I asked you what you would do when men wanted you to fight?
Yes.
You should consider your answer. Patroclus. You do not give things up so easily now as you once did.
Thank you.
Be well.
We'll be back soon.
I will look for you.
We shouldered our bags and left the cave's clearing. The sun was already past the meridian, and the messenger was impatient. We moved quickly down the hill and climbed on the horses that were waiting for us. The saddle felt strange after so many years on foot, and the horses unnerved me. I half expected them to speak, but of course they could not. I twisted in my seat to look back at Pelion. I hoped that I might be able to see the rose quartz cave, or perhaps Chiron himself, but we were too far. I turned to face the road and allowed myself to be led to fear.